And this is class number 3. But before we begin, let us have a word of prayer, shall we? Let's pray. Father in heaven, I ask that you will be with us now as we open your word and open the creation that you have made for us. As we go through this series, I ask that you'll give us the mind to be able to comprehend some of these complex things that you put together in order to grow without the chemicals. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, it really isn't quite as hard as it appears. I think it's a little loud, though. Let's turn it down just a little bit. Because once I start going, I think we'll get testing. Hello. Okay, we're on number 3. And basically, last week we covered bacteria and its the role in the soil in producing fertilizers. Okay? And you guys remember most of that, I think. But if you don't, we will kind of cover some of this today, a little bit higher. Okay, so today, though, we're going to cover fungi. And fungi is completely lacking in the soil in farmlands. And the reason why it is, it's destroyed by our tractors, our plows, our discs, our rototillers. It chops and dices it up and completely destroys fungi. Fungi is the most important single ingredient in the soil for good plant health. And I'm going to show you the reasons why. If you don't have fungi in the soil, you will have nothing but weeds in your garden. Okay? Fungi is very, very critical. Alright? Now it's called mycorrhizal fungi, or endo or ectomycorrhizal fungi. We're going to go over a series on this. But the primary decomposers of soil matter, of all soil matter, including carbon-based, which is organic, and mineral-based, is the fungi and the bacteria. These are the ones that break down the soil and make it plant soluble. All right, so God set this up in the very beginning. He knew how things worked. He set it all up. It was His machine. You go into any old-growth forest, nobody fertilizes it, yet it grows wonderful. Now, why does it grow so wonderful? It's because these fungi and bacteria are completely alive, and they go through and they break down all of the soil nutrients and make it plant soluble, and then the plants grow wonderfully. Now, if we follow God's program, we will be much benefited by it. So there's types of nitrogen produced in the soil. The first one is by bacteria. Bacteria takes the N2 out of the air. The N2 is triple bonded. It breathes the air. They are animals. The smallest living animals on the earth are bacteria. They breathe the air. They take the N2 out of the air, and no man has been able to do it. They break it down, and they turn it into NO3, which is nitrates. Okay? Now, they do this, and they immobilize it in their body, which means, I'm not giving it away. It's mine now. You can't have it. So God set up a series of predators that come along and eat the bacteria and poop it out. All right? And those predators are nematodes, protozoas, microarthropods, earthworms, and they eat this stuff. These bacteria, these little microscopic bacteria, single-cell animals that breathe air, and then they poop it out, and then that becomes nitrates in the soil for your plants. Now, the second part is the fungus, or fungi. Fungi is the plural form of fungus, and it is an air-breathing animal, and in fact, what is the largest animal in the world? Anybody know?
A whale?
A whale.
A fungi.
Whale. Actually, it's a fungus. The largest single animal in the world is a fungus that lives in Washington State in Olympic National Park. It's 20 miles long, it's 20 miles wide, and 25 feet deep, and it feeds an entire forest, one fungal species. Okay? Now, that one single fungal species wraps around the roots of all the trees and is sucking exudates out of the trees, and in exchange, it's a truly symbiotic relationship. It's going out in search of nutrients all over the forest floor and feeding those trees. So it's a symbiotic relationship. It's receiving the exudates, which are sugars from the trees and plants, and it's in turn feeding the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium magnesium and all of the elements back into the trees. The trees do not have to do anything in that forest, but just receive it. That's all they have to do. All right? Now, the way they know that is they've taken DNA samples all the way around, and the DNA samples all match one single species. And as they break out of the forest, then it becomes a new species. So they know exactly where this one single species is. It used to be the largest single species was in Massachusetts, and it was 30 square miles. But now, they harvested that forest and destroyed that fungal species, that one single fungus. Now this fungus, almost all fungus, produces ammonium, which is NH4. Now this is something you must understand in gardening, and I'm going to show you why. It's very, very important to understand that a fungally dominated soil produces ammonium, and a bacterially dominated soil produces nitrates almost 100% of the time, 99% of the time, 99% of the time. There are some exceptions, and I'm going to show you the benefits as we go through this of why you should change your soil from a bacterially dominated soil, which every one of them is, to a fungally dominated soil. And next week we're going to show you how easy it is to do. Okay? So, why must we understand this? Well, here is a quote out of the book Education. In the cultivation of the soil, the thoughtful workers will find that treasures that dreamed of are opening up before him. These are treasures that we're learning today. No one can succeed in agriculture or gardening without attention to the laws involved. Now, you must understand these laws in order to be a successful gardener. The special needs of every variety of plant must be studied. Different varieties require different soil and cultivation, and the compliance with the laws governing each is the condition of success. So you must understand these principles for each and every varied species. I'm going to show you this. All right, so when you look at farmland, they show this as thyme, and I'm going to show you in the next slide what thyme is. But you've got annuals and weeds down there as what they call the early successional plants, which means you start out, you clear your land, and you have bare soil, weeds and annuals grow. And then the next stage, as years go by, the perennial weeds and the grasses grow. And then the shrubs will take over, and the perennial weeds will go away. And then the aspens and the cherries and the young pine and the forest will come along, and then the shrubs will go away. And then the beech and the maple and the broadleaf forest will come along, and then those will go away. And eventually, after a long period of time, the lodgepole pines, these great huge pine trees, they are in this category. Now, what's interesting is this. When you look at the weeds, it's 100% bacterially dominated. It has no fungus. Catch this one, because if you don't catch this one, you're going to be weeding the rest of your life. All right? Now, as you go along, we've got 80% bacteria and 20% fungi, and then we've got 50% fungi and 50% bacteria here. Once you reach this, no weeds can grow. You remember this. Don't forget this. You get your soil fungally, 50-50 fungally bacterial mix, you will have no weeds. You will not fight this pest that you are fighting all your life when you're gardening. The weeds will go away at that point, and I'm going to show you why. Then it goes to 20% bacteria, 80% fungal, and then you go to 10% bacteria and 90% fungal. And when you go to lodgepole pine, it is almost 100% fungally dominated soil. When you go out to the Sierra Nevadas, the redwood forest, those forests, you cannot find, you take a soil sample there, you will not find any bacteria. It's all going to be fungally dominated soil. Now, it's very important for you to understand this principle. At that point, your weeds go away. All right? Now, the root exudates, the chemicals that God has put in this tree, the exudates that comes out of the roots draw the bacteria and the fungi. Now, for those of you who are new here, that haven't been here, what happens, God set up a plant to grow. And out of the root system, if you don't fertilize, if you fertilize, this doesn't work. But if you don't fertilize, out of the root system is an exudate. An exudate is almost all sugars, like 80% sugars, and then 10% carbohydrates, and 10% proteins. And the scientists call it cakes and cookies, and the reason why they do that is because it's so much sugar. You know, it's like our brownies. It's like our ice cream. It's like our, you know, it's that. And so what happens is the trees and the plants put out these exudates, and each one of these tree species put out a different type of exudates to draw a different type of bacteria or fungi. Okay? So these trees are putting out predominantly, they don't want anything but fungus. So they're drawing the fungus, and the exudates have an acid in it that kills the bacteria. So here God set this whole thing up as a way for us to understand how this whole process works. Now, this next chart actually shows you the time. You have the annual plants, which are the weeds, okay? Here we took the forest and cut it down and turned it into farmland, and then we started letting it grow up, and we got a pile of weeds. I've got a couple of fields that are that way, just nothing but weeds right now, all right? And I'm going to convert those fields. Then you've got the grasses, the biennial herbs, and as you go along, you see 3 to 4 years, 4 to 5 years, 5 to 15 years, pines begin to replace the shrubs. Okay? And then as you go along, then you got young oaks and hickory trees begin to change from the pine trees. And at this point, the pine trees die. And you see how many years it is? Now, the 40 acres next to us belonged, actually the 140 acres on that side of the road belonged to my wife's grandfather. And when he died, it was split up among 5 children. And 40 acres of it was sold to a fellow by the name of Dix. And we had planted on it pines. And he went in and harvested the pines. And what was interesting is, at that time, pines were really high. He got as much money on the pines as he paid for the land. So it was a wash for him. So he didn't do anything with it. He just left it alone. And right now, it's 15 years later, it's sitting in this category and has nothing but huge oaks and hickories all through that whole piece of property. So he just left it alone, and it kept going through these successional stages in time. And then once you get up to here, then it converts into, if you were in the West Coast, the lodgepole pines, the redwood forests, and things like that, sequoias. Okay, so here we go through. That's time. That's successional time. What you want to do is get to the point where your soil is fungally 50%. Okay? So, types of plants. I want you to see this. Types of plants that thrive on nitrates, which is bacterially produced. Okay? So, those are field and garden crops and weeds. Okay? So you can grow in that patch that's nothing but bacteria, you can grow your field and garden crops, but you're going to fight weeds constantly. Okay? Now, at this point, when you go into the ammonium side of plants, fungus is what's creating it, and they're the fruit trees, the ornamental trees, the small fruits, and then the nut trees. They all want ammonium. Okay, so if you take, well, let's go. Nitrates are poison. Nitrate is poison to trees. A lot of people don't understand this principle. They'll take a tree and put it out in the middle of a field, don't understand that there's fungus, and don't understand why it's not growing. It's because it needs ammonium, and you've got it packed with nitrates, and it's burning the root systems. And then people go to the fertilizer store, and they think that they can really improve their tree, and they put a little bit of fertilizer on it every year. And they can't understand why it's not producing. It's because you're burning the roots and killing the tree. Okay? So you don't want nitrates on any trees. And if you're going to go the chemical route, stay away from ammonium nitrate to put it on your tree. Stay away from potassium nitrate and put it on your tree. Because you're just going to kill it dead or a doornail. You're not going to wonder, you're going to say, what did I do wrong? There must be something wrong with my soil. No, you're killing it dead. Okay? Now, ammonium, though, is not poisonous to garden crops. So understand this principle. You can put all the ammonium you want on your garden crops, fungally dominated soil, and it's not going to hurt it. But it's going to kill your weeds. Okay? Because if you plant a fruit tree in a bacteria, okay, it will not do well. Ammonium, or fungally dominated soils, is poison to 90+% of the weeds. Now God set this up. All we're doing is cooperating with God. A fungally dominated soil has no weeds. Now I do a lot of hiking in old growth forests. Hiking is a hobby of mine. And I'm going to show you pictures of this, but here's scientific papers that say this. Now, these are scientific papers that we went through and studied in our classwork, in this Dr. Elaine Ingham's class. These are scientific studies. Biological weed control with soil fungi, question mark, antagonistic effects of arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi on the growth of weeds. That whole paper, that scientific journal, was on when they put mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, the weeds went away. Here's another one. Mycorrhizal fungi suppress aggressive agricultural weeds. Here's another one. Weed control, a new discovered benefit of mycorrhizal fungi. All these are scientific papers done by university studies in agronomy departments. So, I took this picture of an old pine forest. Do you see any weeds in that? Do you think it's because weeds can't grow in the shade? That's just absolutely not true. It's because that soil has nothing but fungi in it. And ammonium is poisonous to fungi. Now I'm going to show you this. Ammonium is like a Roundup or better to weeds. That means you want to put fungus in your soil, and when you do, the weeds are going to say, "Ah!" That's what they're going to do. "Ah, you're killing me dead." That's what's going to happen. Okay? So, what this next farm I'm going to show you did, now this was in Australia, in Tasmania. What they did was they put a fungally dominated brood in this, and they went out and sprayed their fields. And I want you to see what happened. Alright? Now, this was sprayed with Roundup, 110 acres with Roundup. And you see there's weeds everywhere. Why do you think, now, in this field, there are little onions all the way through. You can see those little tiny onions. Alright? So, they sprayed this field, and then they planted onions in it, and the weeds are growing. Why? Because now weeds become resistant to glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup. Okay? So, here we have weeds growing. Now, what I'm going to do is show you that they sprayed another 110 acres over on the other field with a fungally dominated spray. All right? They put fungal spores in it and sprayed the field. All right? Then what happened? No weeds. All right? No weeds. Exactly the same time. And what's interesting is this field produced by weight twice as much as the Roundup field. And they used no fertilizer. And in the Roundup field, they used fertilizer. Because the fungus was feeding the onions. Okay? Now, you see this strip right here is really bright green. You see this? All right. That's where they didn't spray any biology. They didn't spray any biology, and they didn't spray any Roundup. Okay? So, when you look at that, you see that little strip right there? This is the field with the fungus, and there's no weeds in it. Okay? That is that strip that no fungus was sprayed, here fungus was sprayed. All right? Can you see this? Now, here's the primary benefit for a fungally dominated soil. One of the primary benefits is your weeds go away. All by themselves. You don't have to go out there and spend your days hoeing. Now, I had a plastic mulch layer that I just love. And I could plant my crops in it, and I didn't have to hoe around it. There are some weeds, let me tell you, goes right through it. A nutgrass, go right through it. All right? But I did that, but all the middles would grow up so high, they cover the crops if you didn't watch out. If you don't use herbicides, which I don't, then you're stuck hoeing the middles. Or running your tractor up and down the middles, getting out when the plants are small. But when the plants get big, you can't do that anymore. So it's a chore. This is a lot easier, folks. And it's very easy to do. And God set it up in the very beginning. And if we just cooperate with Him, then we have success. All right? Now, here's a field. That was fungally sprayed. That was not.
Oh, wow.
Is that amazing? You know, when you think about this, cooperate with God in the process. Set it up the way He set it up, and you're not going to fight that battle. Now, there are some weeds in there, but not enough to worry about. You don't even have to hoe that field. Don't have to do anything to it. Just cooperate. Make it a 50-50 mix. Now, I have a microscope, and I can look and tell you if it's a 50-50 mix. It's very easy. Okay, so there's two types of fungi. There's endomycorrhizal fungi, and there's ectomycorrhizal fungi. 90% of all plant species use that. Old growth forests use ectomycorrhizal fungi. Can you put ecto on row crops? Yeah, but it won't benefit them. Okay? Now, Alex, I want you to do me a favor. Start passing these around. These are the lists of plants that are benefited by ecto and endo. Okay? So when you look at these lists, you're going to see the plants that want endo, which is 90% of all species of plants want this type of fungi. And there's a difference between the two types. These are the two main types of fungi. And they're very easy to buy and very easy to cultivate, and you can get them wherever you want to get them and just make it easy for you. We'll go through this. This is the list that's being handed out right now, and you can go and buy this. There's mycorrhizal, endo, and ectomycorrhizal fungi, granular form, that farmers who are biologically farming take and spread on their tractors, with their fertilizer spreaders. Okay, that's granular form, and then you can buy a powdered form, which here's an endomycorrhizal inoculant that you can get from aquaponics, or you can get it from Kilt for Less. It's really reasonable. 1 pound costs about $80. 1 pound will do 5 acres. You can buy 8 ounces, you can buy 4 ounces, you can buy 2 ounces. It doesn't take much, trust me. These spores multiply so fast, you don't need much. So if you bought a pound of it from Kilt for Less and split it up among 3 or 4 families, you'd have enough to do an entire garden for 4 or 5 years. And once you inoculate your soil, it's there if you don't till it. So you don't have to do it 2 or 3 times. Okay? Carter?
Overdo it?
No, you can't. You can put as much as you want. Now, that's a good point, Carter. Can you overdo it? Now, most of them are saying put a teaspoon in a gallon of water, pour it on your ground, or pour it on your plants. On your seeds. The way we inoculate a seed with mycorrhizal fungi is we'll take the seed, put it in a bowl, take like a tablespoon of mycorrhizal fungi in a gallon of water, pour it on, and let them soak in. And then take and pour them through a colander, and then put them on a towel, let them dry out. Now they're inoculated with the spores. You can't see them. They're so tiny, they're attached to the seed, and they'll dry right on the seed. When you put them in the soil, bang! They will grow twice the rate of any fertilizer you'll ever put on. Twice the rate. It'll shock you. It'll blow you away. I'm telling you, it'll blow you away. As we go through this, you're going to see this. All right? Now, Kilt for Less, that's what I usually buy. You can buy mycorrhizal fungi granular. You can buy it ultra fine. You can buy it powdered. It's called www.kilt for the number less. It's the easiest place to buy it. That's where I buy it, or have bought it for years. I just now bought 20 pounds. So I bought it in a large quantity, and they're shipping it to me right now. But not from Kilt for Less. I bought it from a wholesaler because I'm in business. So if you are afraid to put your credit card on the internet, I buy things every day on the internet. Just come see me, and I'll tell you a little bit. All right, so micronized endomycorrhizal fungi is really what you want. Granular, you get a very small amount of spores per teaspoon, or you have to use a lot more of it, okay? So you would put it on pretty thick if you were going to use granular. And it's got about 10% of the spores that this does by weight. So it's really not real potent, but micronized is really the way you want to go. All right? So what happens is this. You've got endomycorrhizal fungi and ecto, and I know it's going off the screen a little bit here, but endo invaginates right into the roots. That's why they call it endo. They invaginate right into the roots, and they take the nutrition from the soil and feed the root hairs. Now, and when you look at this is endo. They invaginate into it, and this is ecto. They go on the outside. Here is the mycorrhizal fungi just wrapping around it. This one, they go right into it. I'll show you pictures of it as we go through here. Here's endomycorrhizal. They go right into the root hairs and feed it directly. In exchange, they want the exudates. Okay? Now, here is a root hair that was inoculated with mycorrhizal spores, and here they are growing. You see them growing right here? All right. And here's the spores on the root hairs just before they germinate. And as they germinate, this is what they look like. That's been dyed. That's not the normal color, they're tan. Tan or clear. Okay, so here we have this mycorrhizal spore growing. And as it grows, it hyphenates. Each section hyphenates. Do you know the difference between a good fungi and a bad fungi? It's the hyphenation. That's called fungal hyphae. It's hyphenated. All right? So they're hyphenated. The good guys, when you look at them under the microscope, if they have hyphae, then they're hyphenated. They have these little sections. They're the good guys. The bad guys don't have that. So that's what you're looking for under the microscope. Now, this article here says that when you inoculate with mycorrhizal fungi, you make it 700 times more powerful in the ability to uptake nutrients. 700 times greater. Here's a plant that has mycorrhizal fungi. Here's a plant that doesn't. Mycorrhizal fungi, this is ecto on a redwood tree, and this was grown without the same age. Here's a tomato plant, mycorrhizal fungi, endo on this one. This is endo mycorrhizal fungi, and this is without. See the root structure? All right. Here is a strawberry plant grown with it, and a strawberry plant grown without it. Here is a corn grown with it. See the root structure, and the corn grown without it. Here is a little pine tree grown with it, and a pine tree grown without it. And what happens is this mycorrhizal fungi just kind of fans out and gets all the nutrition all the way around the root system and just brings it right to the plant automatically. It doesn't have to do a thing. It just sits there and says, feed me, feed me, feed me. And the minute you put a chemical fertilizer on, you kill it all dead, you shut off its exudates, and from that point on, you have to feed it fertilizer for the rest of its life. All right, now here we go. I took a plant, I did a study. I went to Home Depot and I bought some tomato plants that had fertilizer on them. And I took them and put them in my greenhouse. And I said, I wonder if I can turn on these exudates again. So what I did was I washed the root systems completely off of everything. And then I put it in the soil. And they're growing pretty well, but not as well as they were before. So my next test is I'm going to take some and I'm going to inoculate with mycorrhizal fungi and compare them side by side to ones that hadn't been fertilized and the ones that had, and see how that works. So I'm doing experiments right now in my greenhouse to understand, can we take a tree that's been raised by someone? Can we go and buy a Satsuma orange tree that's been fertilized and looks beautiful? Can we then take it and put it in the ground and have mycorrhizal fungi grow around it if we wash the roots? So that's the study that I'm doing right now, and I'll let you know how it goes. So it's really significant because otherwise you're going to have to grow your own trees. All right, now here is a crop of greens put in. This has mycorrhizal fungi. This does not, and it's been grown organically. Do you see how significant mycorrhizal fungi is to your gardening, successful gardening? First of all, it shuts your weeds down. And secondly, it feeds your plants dramatically. Now here's mycorrhizal fungi coming out of root hairs. Here's some more. You see this white fuzz? That's mycorrhizal fungi. Here it is again. Here it is coming out of that root hair. And this is basically how it works. It goes out in search of food everywhere. Here's mycorrhizal fungi coming out of that root hair. Mycorrhizal fungi again. Mycorrhizal fungi there. See, the mycorrhizal fungi? You're not even seeing the roots coming out of that plant, but the mycorrhizal fungi is out in search of food for you. Now here's the hyphenated. You see the hyphens? Each one of these hyphens have sections full of nutrition for the plant. Now when you see mushrooms, what does that tell you? That's a forest with ectomycorrhizal fungi. So when you go there and you're in search of soil that has fungus in it, find that. Right under it, you've got a whole load. Now next week what I'm going to do is I've got some videos that I took that I went in search of soil. I'm going to show you where in the woods to get inoculants for free. You don't even have to buy it if you don't want to. You can just go get it for free. Okay, so I'll show you next week how to do that, how to inoculate your soil, how to reduce compaction layers in your soil, And from that point on, it'll grow on its own. Mushrooms are the key. They are the periscope for the fungi. Now, this little picture right here is pretty significant to understand. If you're going to grow orange trees, okay, and you have a forest, a hardwood forest right here, and the forest canopy is coming up, say, right about here where the slide is. Where are you going to plant your tree? You see the sun coming up from the east. Let's say the east is over there. That's north. But let's say the east is over there. And the sun is coming up. And you say, oh, it can get plenty of sun right here. I could just tuck it right up next to the woods. All right? I could just tuck it right up next to the woods because it's going to get 7 hours of sunlight before, boom, it's going to go away. Big mistake. Let me tell you why. The fungi that grows in this tree sends out, the root system sends out an exudate that feeds the fungi that goes out and says to this little tree that grew up under here, I want you to grow well because you're my species. Okay? You getting this? But anything that's growing anywhere around this fungi goes out for a long ways. And it goes out and it attacks this plant that's not of the same species. And it says, I'm going to kill you deader than a doornail. So it brings a parasitic fungi to it and kills it dead. Because it's in its area. That's why when you go into a redwood forest, you see nothing but redwood forest. When you go into a pine forest, you see nothing. When we planted our pine trees right next to our oak trees, quite a ways out, they didn't do well at all. Because the exudates and the fungi from those oak trees went out and just made it miserable for them. So you have an oak barrier around your property. You have clear. The best place you can ever grow is right in the middle of that field. Don't grow next to the oaks. Because this is going to happen. It's going to send out the fungi. It's going to send a signal to kill every other plant deader than a doornail in that area. That's why the weeds aren't growing. All right?
So where do you get it from?
What do you do?
Where do you get it from? If you don't get it out of that tree, it's going to kill your other plants.
Where do you get it from? Okay, now if you separate that fungi from that tree, that fungi will adapt to the new environment.
Interesting.
Yes. And that was a good question, Carter. That's a very good question. Because I could go into an old growth forest that's 200, 500 years old, get the fungi in there that had this kind of a relationship with that tree, and when I put it next to another tree, that exudate's going to start transforming that one into its own fungi. Yes?
Is he going to do the same thing to plants?
To plants too, yes. It makes it an acidic environment for... Now, you'll notice it says mushrooms from the mycorrhizal fungi. When you see that pop up, if you have mushrooms on your property, that means you have fungus in your soil. And say, praise the Lord, I've got mushrooms on my land. Everybody else thinks, I've had more calls. I got mushrooms in my potted plants. Praise the Lord! Hallelujah! You know, that's what I tell them. You've done something good. What did I do? You know, they don't know. But you get those mushrooms, that's a good guy. That's telling you something good is happening. And God set all this stuff up. We just have to give Him credit for it and follow His principles. All right, now the benefits. First of all, it's weed control. You put fungus in your soil, it's going to be weed control. Number two, it's pest control, both soil and plant. We're going to cover the plant another time. But this fungus will attack bugs on your plants and eat them. Okay? So, it also brings food to the plants and trees. It kills pathogens in the soil as it eats them. It destroys them, just like earthworms do. We covered that last week. And it holds nutrients in the soil. And also holds water in the soil. So you don't have to have as much rainfall if you have a fungally dominated soil. You're looking for a 50-50 balance. Fungus to bacteria to have a good garden. If you're going to grow a tree, if you're going to grow a fruit tree of any kind, you want it to be 80% fungus, 20% bacteria. So keep this in mind. What you're growing determines how you balance your soil. If you want 100% weeds, kill all your fungus. Okay? If you want a row crop, 50-50. That's what you're looking for. Now, how do you determine that? All right, so we're going to cover this in other ones, but I'm just going to give you a short understanding of this. If you take chipped wood and you compost it, all chipped wood produces 100% fungally dominated soil. If you take your garden vegetables and you compost it, it's 100% bacteria. All right? Because it's bacterially driven. You take that plant material, whether it's squash, I took some squash plants out, I put them in my compost pile yesterday. When you take that squash plant and you put it in a compost pile, it's going to be bacterially dominated. All right, so you want to put a tree in, you want to use composted trees, composted limbs, composted leaves. Anything that breaks down from that, and that tree will grow, bang, so fast it'll scare you. You'll say, we had one tree grew 5 feet in 1 year. You think about it, and produce hundreds of apples. How do you do that? It's because it wants fungus. So you gear your plant, you gear your to the type of plant you're going to plant. Okay, now, what if you wanted to, you could take your soil and not even put any of those wood chips or stuff in it. It's better to do it. But if you took that mycorrhizal fungi and you just put a pound of it, now this is where we're going back to Carter's question. Can you overdo it? All right. I read this study on these trees. Now this one university took this series of trees and they had trees, fruit trees, fruit trees, fruit trees, rows of it. On this one they put 10% fungus, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 100%. And the way they did it was they did a pound for 250 gallons of water. And they just took a pound of this mycorrhizal fungi, put it in a 250-gallon tank, and watered the trees. And the trees that had a pound versus a tenth of a pound, the trees that did a pound did the best. You can't overdo it. Now, once they reached 2 pounds, it was diminished in value. It didn't help them at all. At a pound was ideal for fruit trees. A pound for 250 gallons. That was the mixture ratio that they put on. So you can see kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to get more and more fungus to those trees. And the more fungus you get, then the better they're going to grow. All right, what holds nutrients in the soil? A lot of people understand that sand, silt, and clay doesn't hold it. Right? You understand that. You run water through sand, silt, and clay, the water and everything goes right through it, right? All right, some people say organic matter holds the nutrients in the soil. Well, that's just not true. The microorganisms actually do. And I'm going to show you how this works. In this study, what they did in the class that I took, they took soil and they put it in these containers. And then they put a bag of crushed oyster shells, calcium, on the top of them. And then they poured 1 liter of water through these soils. All right, now this actually is 5% organic matter. This one has bacteria in it, and this one has fungi. All right, so what they did was they put 5% organic matter. This has 5% organic matter plus bacteria growing in it. This has 5% organic matter plus bacteria plus fungi. This is just soil, dirt. Okay, and all of the dirt was from the same place. All right, so what they did was then they poured 1 liter of water on the top of it. And what happened was 100% of the calcium came through on that. On this, 98% of the calcium came through with the organic matter. On this, with the bacteria, 95% came through and washed through. When the fungi was added, none came through. It was all held in the fungi. The fungal hyphae are like straws. You take a straw, dip it in water, put your finger over it, it'll take it up, right? Well, unless you break that bond, it won't pour out. The same way with fungal hyphae, it sucks it up and holds it for the plant. When the plant needs it, it feeds it little by little. Okay? Here is a bug eating fungal hyphae. Now, when it eats the fungal hyphae, what does it do? Poops. And when it poops, see if he's eating this fungal hyphae, this is what they call a microarthropod. It's microscopic, incidentally. But this micro-octopod is eating that, and then he's going to poop. And when he poops, he's going to feed your plants. Okay? Now, here is another benefit to mycorrhizal fungi. Let's see how late we're getting. We've got plenty of time. Okay, so here's another benefit to mycorrhizal fungi. Here's a field. Most people wouldn't know that sitting here, but anybody that's been a farmer for years knows that that's a nematode infestation into your soil. All right? So the nematodes aren't hitting here. They're all hitting all around here. Nematodes are soil. Well, they're worms in the soil. There's good guys and there's bad guys. These are the bad guys. They're called root knot nematodes. These root knot nematodes actually eat the roots. And here's some patches of root knot nematodes and patches right here, root knot nematodes in this, it looks like soybeans. All right, here's some more beans that the root knot nematodes come. Now what happens is this. Where the root knot nematodes are, you're not going to get in the upper plant as much bug infestation. Once the plants become distressed, it sends out a signal to the bugs, come and get me and chew me up. Now I have a bed that I did as a test, and I've left it. And the worms are eating them dead on the doornail. I mean, they're so laced up, I pulled the leaf off yesterday, it's just full of worms. Because I let it get diseased, I let it get stressed, and the plants right next to it in the same bed are not getting eaten. Because those plants are kale, and kale likes a different type of bacteria, a different type of growing environment than this does. So I made it so it grows kale well, but it can't grow anything else well. So when you planted something else in that bed, the kale's flourishing, no bugs on it, no worms, nothing on it. They're beautiful plants. But these amaranth plants, they want a 50-50 fungally dominated soil where the brassica mix, they want actinomycete bacteria. That's what they want. You feed them actinomycetes, and we'll cover that later, then they're going to grow wonderfully. Well, those worms aren't touching the kale. And they're in the exact same bed, and the amaranth is all around them, and the worms are eating the diseased plants. Okay? Now we're going to cover that in no lessons. All right? This is what root knot nematodes does to those plants. It just destroys the roots. Here's some more. And here's potatoes with root knot nematodes on it. When you cut them open, that's what they look like inside. I planted in one of my fields an acre of potatoes. It should have produced 5,000 pounds of potatoes. It produced 5,000 pounds of diseased potatoes because of root knot nematodes in it. Because it had no fungus in it. Fungus destroys nematodes. I'm going to show you how this works. Here's carrots, and I pulled some carrots like this in years past that had root knot nematodes attacking them. This is a root knot nematode. Now there are probably 50, 60 different species of nematodes. This is the root knot nematode. You'll see this little spot right here if you see it under a microscope. That right there is a root knot nematode. You see that? That's what they call the knot. And it has like a needle that comes out and it pierces the roots and it sucks the nutrition out and sends disease in it. All right. Now the fungi, they produce these little arbuscules and these little lassos. And they have a chemical in there that attracts the nematodes, and the nematodes slide right through it, and they choke them to death. All right. Now, here's another one getting choked right in the middle. See, getting choked and kills them. Won't let them go anywhere. So that fungus is going to protect your plants against the root knot nematodes. If you have fungus in your soil, root knot nematodes will have not a chance to get to your roots. They'll be destroyed before they ever get there. And then they turn them into fertilizer and then feed your plants from the root knot nematodes. It's a remarkable thing. God set this up, guys. God set it up, and He's a marvelous maker of His creation. I want you to see this video.
Cooler, drier woodlands, they have great difficulty in living out in the open. Instead, they hide in the ground or within the tissues of the bodies they feast on. A fungus has no stem, no root, no leaves. For most of the time, it's nothing more than a tangled tissue of branching threads. These produce digestive acids, absorb the resulting soup, and then use it to construct more threads and widen their search for more dead plant tissue. But cellulose is very low in nitrogen. To get that, some fungi trap living animals. The microscopic threads develop tiny lassos. These give off a chemical that attracts microscopic worms, nematodes. One of them nuzzles into the ring, and the fungus suddenly draws its lasso tight. The worms are killed, and the fungus has its nitrogen. All this takes place out of sight, below ground, or within the body of a dead plant. Only when a fungus is ready to reproduce does it make itself more visible.
Okay, I want you to see this next one. I'm going to show you the different processes that God set up the fungi for. And when you go in the soil, you're going to see they have, the fungus has a lot of different ways to protect your plant. Okay, all underground. It's a remarkable process. So when you look at this next film, we won't watch the whole thing because it's 13 minutes long, but it's really interesting. What you're going to see is the different processes that fungi do in order to protect your plants. And then they use those microscopic worms as fertilizer or nitrogen for your plants. Now these microscopic worms are a 10-to-1 ratio of nitrogen to carbon to nitrogen ratio. They're the highest of all species of nitrogen. So when you take these things and the fungus kills them, it feeds them to your plant. And it won't let it harm your plant. So you don't have to go out and put an insecticide in your soil to kill them. As long as you have fungus there, it's going to do it for you. Automatically. All right? Here's the next one.
Nematophagous fungi. Soil nematodes are small roundworms, some of which are parasitic on plants and animals and may cause severe damage to crops and livestock. A group of soil fungi are natural enemies of nematodes. These fungi have developed different mechanisms of capturing, killing, and digesting their prey. The fungi have the ability to change their morphology so that nematodes may adhere to them or be captured in mechanical traps. For instance, nematodes are captured in constricting rings, or they are held fast by sticky branches. A captured nematode is inescapably gripped by the fungus. The nematophagous fungi capture nematodes either with special mycelial structures or with their spores, as in the endoparasitic fungi.
Some fungi attack nematodes with motile zoospores. Others infect their hosts with adhesive conidia. Endoparasitic fungi often live as obligate parasites in the soil.
The uniflagellate zoospores of Catenaria anguillulae are 2 to 3 micrometers wide and move rapidly in the water film on an agar surface. They are chemically attracted to nematodes and aggregate at the mouth or other natural orifices. Here the nematode Pangrellus redivivus has been immobilized by cold treatment. After contact, the zoospores produce an adhesive, withdraw their flagella, form a cell wall, and become attached to the surface of the host. From the encysted zoospore, a germ tube is formed that penetrates the nematode. The same situation seen in the scanning electron microscope. A few zoospores still have their flagella, while others are already encysted. Following penetration in the mouth region, trophic hyphae develop within the nematode and digest its contents. Segments of the hyphae develop into zoosporangia 10 to 12 hours after infection. They subsequently mature and produce evacuation tubes. A few minutes after the zoospores have differentiated inside the zoosporangia, they are released. The release is shown here somewhat faster than real time. The zoospores can now attack new nematodes.
It's kind of amazing. You put this in the soil if you don't put chemicals on it. You put chemicals on it.
Dracaeria coniospora, another endoparasitic fungus, uses non-motile spores called conidia with small adhesive buds. When a nematode comes into contact with the conidia, these adhere to the chemosensory structures in the mouth region. In this scanning electron micrograph, conidia are seen adhering with their adhesive buds to the cuticle at the tip of the host's head. They produce aprisoria and penetrate the nematode cuticle. The fungal mycelium, here seen in focus, grows through the host and digests its contents. After digestion of the nematode, conidiophores protrude through the cuticle. The conidia are often produced in clusters. These contain 30 to 40 conidia. The conidia are produced in succession.
Okay, we don't have to go through the whole thing, but I wanted to make sure you had time to ask questions if you had any. This is not as complicated as it appears. Basically what you want to do is to add fungus to your soil, whether you go to the woods and you grow your own, which we're going to teach you how to do next week, or you go and buy it. It doesn't really matter. Whatever way you want to do it, it doesn't matter. For some of us, we just rather buy it and mix it up in a concoction. I'll show you how to do that next week, and pour it on your soil and let it start converting. And I'll show you the whole process next week. It'll be quite simple, and you'll have a growing garden soon. Now, remember last week I told you that you had an assignment, and that was to put out black plastic on the top of your grass or weeds and let it cook, okay? And the reason why that was is you take that black plastic, you put it down, you leave it 4 to 6 weeks, it cooks all the bad guys in that soil. It gets up to 140 degrees, and it cooks it down about 6 to 8 inches. It cooks every single weed seed, every seed period in that soil down to 6 inches if you wet it really good before you put the black plastic down. So you're going to put your garden there, and you say, I want this spot as my garden. Take your black plastic, 1 mil, doesn't have to be 6 mil, but 6 mil will work. You put your black plastic down, make sure all the outside corners are covered up so that no air can escape that soil. You start baking. You can use clear plastic too. You start baking and baking and baking down to 6 inches. It kills all the pathogens, all the weed seeds, every single thing that's bad will die. But anything that's good in that soil lives to 180 degrees. It's remarkable. When you take that black plastic off, you have a sterile environment to grow whatever you want, and then we're going to inoculate with the bacteria, the fungi, and everything. So it'll grow with no weeds. You will not struggle. It'll be what you need it to be. I will teach you how to get rid of the compaction next week, because compaction is an issue. When you have compaction in your soil, I have a compaction meter. When you push it down the soil, when you hit 300 psi, 90-something% of all plants cannot penetrate that, including water. At 300 psi, the water comes down. If it's 9 inches down, water comes down, hits that, builds up, and runs off. If you did not have that compaction layer there, the water would go down and infiltrate into the aquazone, into the aquifer of the soil. So what you want to do is go straight down. You do not want it to hit and do runoff. If you have runoff on your soil, that means you have a compaction layer. I'm going to show you how to break that and fix it. Yes, Carter?
You mentioned chipped wood.
Yes.
100% fungi.
Yes.
I was told or read where if you put the chipped wood onto a garden and it goes down, it starts to decay and either takes away or adds nitrogen.
Yes.
I thought that was bad for the soil.
Okay. Yes. That's why I say fully composted chipped. Fully composted chipped. Does not take away nitrogen. Well, I'll begin to show you that next week. How to make it. When you take and incorporate sawdust is not good. But when you take and incorporate sawdust and you disc it into your soil, it will rob every single bit of nitrogen in order to break it down. Sawdust is incidentally the worst part of the tree to be able to put in your garden. You want the bark, you want the limbs, you want the leaves, you want the twigs. Those are what you want. That's where all the nutrition is. The outside layer, from the cambium layer out, and all the branches, all the leaves, So somebody that's cutting limbs up and then they grind it up, oh man, do you want that stuff? That's gold. Okay? Yes?
If you're composting that with limbs and all that, how long does it have to sit then before it becomes compost?
Okay, that's a good question too. We're going to cover that in detail. It depends on how many times you turn it and how much nitrogen is in it. We're going to cover that in detail in subsequent classes.
Okay, and another question.
Yes.
Did I hear you say that if you buy a plant or have a plant that's already been fertilized, that you cannot turn it to fungi?
Okay, that's the question that I have in my own mind. That has not been answered in the class. So I'm going to find, I've got right now a satsuma tree that's large and has satsumas on it. I'm going to wash all the root systems up when I get ready to plant it. I'm going to wash it out, and I'm going to inoculate it with fungi and bacteria. And then I'm going to put it into the soil, and I'm going to see if I can jolt the exudates to life again. Because once you put fertilizer on a plant, it says, I don't need to manufacture exudates anymore, I'm getting all I need. So it shuts the exudate process down. It no longer draws bacteria and fungi to it. Now, I think it's going to work. And the reason why I say that is I took these 6 plants that were homestead tomato, heirloom tomatoes I bought from Home Depot, and I washed them off and I put them in my soil that has no fertilizer. And they're growing. So I think it can be done. I did not inoculate them. So the next step is to find some and inoculate them and see how well they do. And see if I can make them grow like the plants that I grow from seed. Anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Compost tea, is that good for your garden?
Yes, ma'am. Compost tea is a wonderful thing. We're going to cover that in these lessons, how to make it, how to create it, how to make these microbes balanced correctly in the tea brew, and how to apply it, and how long it will last. Because you can buy compost tea on the internet, and they say, buy this compost tea, and I can guarantee in 2 hours all the compost is dead. All the microbiology is dead. So you're getting a bunch of dead microbes. Okay, yes?
How are you supposed to get rid of the chemicals that are in the soil?
The chemicals, how do you get rid of the chemicals in the soil? The biology will get rid of it. When you put the biology on it, it washes down and eats up all of the toxins, all the chemicals, and everything it will destroy.
I have another question.
Yes?
When you inoculate your seeds, and you put them out to dry, first of all, how long do they need to stay in that?
15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you spread them out?
Put them on a bounty towel on your
Uh-huh.
kitchen table. Just spread them out and let them dry.
Okay, now how long can you keep those seeds before you plant them?
5-10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. If you put them in 45 degrees in the refrigerator, you can keep them as long as you want. They will live. Yep. Freezing them. Some seed work better when you freeze them. Those are the ones that are from Yankeeville. They go through those freezes. Okay, yes. Brother Carlos?
Yeah, yes, hello. When we have we buy certain products at the supermarket, and we like the quality of the products, and we're trying to save the seeds to plant them in the future. What should be the process that we should do with those seeds? Should we clean them and let them dry? Or we
Okay.
should leave a little bit of the pulp, attached to it?
Good
They might
questions.
rot with it.
Most of the seed that you get in the supermarket, you cannot save. And the reason why you cannot save them is, number one, they're from hybrids. Almost all plants that farmers grow today are hybrid seeds. If you buy a tomato and you say, oh man, that tomato is wonderful, you can be sure when you save the seed, it's going to grow what kind of tomato plant? Anybody know? Cherry tomatoes. It will not be a mother plant. They'll take a cherry tomato plant and cross it with another plant to produce a really good growing tomato, and you will not get the regular seed. Almost all plants from the grocery store, unless it says heirloom or open pollinated, it will not produce after its own time.
Will it happen the same thing with pumpkins and squashes?
There are some squashes and some pumpkins that are hybrids, but not as many. They really don't infiltrate that area. So yes, you could save those. And the best thing you could do is just scrape out the heart, lay them on a bounty towel, let them dry. They'll dry out, and then just you can wipe all the pulp off of them,
Right.
and then put them in the refrigerator in a plastic bag, Ziploc bag, put them in the refrigerator, mark the bag, and you can save them and they will grow.
From the time that we clean them, how soon can we plant it? Instead of freezing
Immediately.
them, can we just plant it immediately?
Yes, they will grow immediately.
Oh.
It works better if you freeze them overnight.
Oh, one more question. Oh. We bought a property here in Lake City some years ago, and now that we moved permanently into it, we cleared some old pines and some old weeds that used to be there. Oh, we have a very sandy soil. Some weeds are growing through it. We have the cattle every now and then going over there to clean them.
You start growing what?
Sometimes I put the cattle in there, take them out from another field and put it there so they can use some of that weeds.
Wheat.
Right. As soon as I'm getting ready to prepare that, my concern is because sometimes people refer to the cattle grass as grass, sometimes they refer it on to just as weeds. What type of nutrients should I be giving when I plant the grass for the cattle? Should I impregnate that soil with a heavy fungus?
Okay, all right. Now grass, when you look at grass, grass is a 50-50. It's a perennial and it's a 50-50. If you haven't been digging in that soil, it's got fungus there already. It's going to be a 50-50 field. The problem that you have when you're planting grass is that the grass is so tenacious it takes over your garden. That's why the black plastic, if you're going to have a small garden, works really well. Or even if you have a big garden, you use a big plastic. But the best thing you can do, and there was a class, my first class, where you spray compost tea over the field, which has fungus, bacteria.
Compost tea.
The fact is, I'll cover that one next week in detail. Okay, the compost tea.
Because last year maybe it happened to a lot of other folks. One of the reasons that I bought that property in particular, it hasn't been treated with no chemical for
That's
maybe
good.
maybe 5 years before we purchased it. So
That's
we owned
good.
it for about 8 years. So we know that for a long period of time there's been no artificial chemicals sprayed. And before I do anything that might upset that balance, I want to know which route should I go.
Well, just keep hanging in here in these classes. We're going to cover that next week.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right? Anybody else have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you about organic seeds.
Organic seeds.
You can save those in the,
Yes.
yeah. So that-
You buy organic seeds and you grow something from them. They're almost always from an heirloom or an open pollinated plant. You can save those. And incidentally, the difference between organic seed, non-organic seed, and treated seed. Treated seed has a chemical that's a fungicide. Don't ever buy a treated seed. It will kill all your fungus dead. Don't buy it. But you can buy regular seeds that have no chemicals on it and they're okay. The organic seeds are grown organic. Okay? They have been grown in an organic manner. Anybody else got any questions? I think we're ready. Incidentally, we have church at 11 o'clock for those who are guests. We also have a fellowship dinner afterwards. And basically, these are health, gardening related classes. We covered some of the reasons in the previous things. When you use chemicals on this, if you eat them, it goes into your system and gets into your intestines and kills all the bacteria and fungi in your gut. And then disease sets in. So what we're trying to do is improve our health, number one. Get ready for Jesus' coming, right? He's coming soon. All right? And so we're getting ready, and we're trying to take care of these bodies God gave us. We are giving glory to Him by following His principles of health. Okay? Anybody who would like to have our closing prayer?
Kind and loving Father, we thank you for this information that we have received today, that we may apply it to our lives and wait for your coming. Bless each one that is here today. Keep us all in your name.